It's trade time, bringing you 5 players you need to be buying for week 10 fantasy football, especially as we head towards fantasy football trade deadlines. And the first player you need to be targeting, it is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if you would have asked me early on in the offseason, Caleb, tell me which rookie wide receiver you think had the best chance to perform for fantasy football purposes, I would have said, hey, it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors. But Malik Neighbors has been great. But Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver 11 right now in fantasy football. And when we look overall, he's a top 40 player. But this last week versus the Philadelphia Eagles had only 6.2 fantasy football points, had a 91% snap share, 4 targets for 2 receptions for 22 yards. Brian Thomas Jr., a lot of people are not going to realize that he was battling a little bit of a chest injury, came into the game questionable. But if I'm trying to get some value, if I'm trying to add some additional upside at the end of my bench, I 100% want to be targeting a guy like a Brian Thomas Jr. because we know how valuable Brian Thomas Jr. is. So when we start to look at trades for Brian Thomas Jr., we start to see some deals go down. We see a Jonathan Brooks, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brian Thomas for A.J. Brown and Michael Pittman Jr. Listen, clearly I want the Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brian Thomas side. I understand A.J. Brown, like this deal, it's looking like you might want to go with the A.J. Brown side, but with that injury to A.J. Brown, I think getting into 2 guys like a Brian Thomas and Marvin Harrison Jr., absolutely great deal for the first deal that just occurred yesterday. We then go to Brian Thomas for Chuba Hubbard and Jake Ferguson. Give me the Brian Thomas side. We got some bigger deals. We could go through those piece by piece, but then like a Marvin Harrison Jr., Brian Thomas for Garrett Wilson, absolutely give me the Marvin Harrison Jr., Brian Thomas side. Keenan Allen, Joe Mixon for Brian Thomas and James Cook. Personally, I'm with the Brian Thomas and James Cook. I know Joe Mixon's an absolute league winner at the running back position, but being able to tear off of a Joe Mixon to go get an elite level wide receiver in a Brian Thomas and a James Cook is 100% a deal I want to be doing. So definitely be going and targeting some Brian Thomas. I just think Brian Thomas, the pedigree, the way that he's continued to outperform his situation for the Jacksonville Jaguars makes me excited heading into the rest of the season. The next guy that you need to be trying to trade for, and we've talked about him in a lot of previous videos, it's going to be Breece Hall for the New York Jets. And Breece Hall has been a little bit of a disappointment this season because he's the RB7. You had to draft him as a top 2, if not top 3 RB in your fantasy football drafts. Last 2 weeks, 10.5 fantasy points this last week in week 9, 9 fantasy points in week 8. So you're going to say to me, Caleb, why are we continuing to buy into Breece Hall? I've never met somebody that continues to push up Breece Hall more. We got Braylon Allen taking snaps. We saw a big day from Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, the passing tag, getting it over. Why are we excited for Breece Hall? The main reason that I am excited for Breece Hall is the schedule coming up. We got the Arizona Cardinals. We got the Colts. They got the bye in week 12. Then we got Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, Rams, Buffalo. So pretty much until Buffalo, for me, that week 17 game, it's a very good schedule for Breece Hall and this overall Jets rushing attack, which makes me excited as we start to look forward to what we could potentially be doing, who we could potentially be trading for Breece Hall. And we start this off with some trades. Someone traded Jahmyr Gibbs straight up for Breece Hall. Listen, I have Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit ahead, but I do think it's a fair level value to be had with Breece Hall and Jahmyr Gibbs traded straight up. Breece Hall traded for Garrett Wilson after that amazing performance. I would understand why you might want the Garrett Wilson side. Personally, I'm with the Breece Hall side. Devontae Adams and David Montgomery for Breece Hall. Give me the Breece Hall side there. So there are some interesting deals, even like a Cooper Kupp, J.K. Dobbins. Depends if you still view Breece Hall as an absolute stud. Now, some of you guys tuning into this video are not going to view Breece Hall as an absolute stud. So maybe you do want to tier off of a Breece Hall if you have him to get something. But for me, I want to go explore what potentially buying Breece Hall is going to look like because I love what we're seeing from these overall traits. Now, my next buy, and we talked about him last week too. Maybe these 2 guys were in back-to-back weeks videos, and they continue to be 2 priorities for me going forward, especially in PPR. DeAndre Swift is my next buy target. Listen, Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, we understand it hasn't been the best for this passing attack, but DeAndre Swift continues to look good. And there was a few of you guys in my video last week that said, hey, DeAndre Swift, you need to try to trade him because his schedule only gets worse going down the stretch. New England, Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit over the next 4 weeks. But when we're looking at DeAndre Swift sliding in as RB17 right now, like we said, 14 fantasy points versus Arizona, 18 points versus Washington, continues to be a high-end running back too that I just want a ton of pieces of. I love DeAndre Swift Swift. I love the upside that he provides in full PPR. So when we start to look at trades, DeAndre Swift and Josh Downs for AJ Brown, especially with Joe Flacco in the helm, that's only going to benefit Josh Downs there. So I like that package side for AJ Brown. DeAndre Swift for Josh Downs. Give me DeAndre Swift there. Romeo Doubs, Darnell Mooney for DeAndre Swift. Give me DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift for James Conner. Listen, James Conner's been absolutely killing it. So I probably lean the James Conner side, but I think if you're a DeAndre Swift truther, like that's a fair in the realm of value there. Someone tiered off of Justin Jefferson for a DeAndre Swift Malik Neighbors. That makes me excited. Not that I always love to trade JJ, the absolute GOAT of wide receivers, but I do think there are value to be had with trades. And so definitely if you're going and you're looking at what should I do with a DeAndre Swift, definitely go try to buy DeAndre Swift. I am trying to buy him everywhere, especially as we head down the stretch, trying to get some extra running back depth onto my roster. Now, we're bringing you two more guys that you need to be targeting in your fantasy football leagues for trades. Next guy is going to be Ladd McConkey. And Ladd McConkey was kind of like a waiver wire ad earlier on in the season, but right now sitting at wide receiver 19 overall. This last week had 11.4 fantasy points, 84% snap share, 7 targets for 5 receptions for 64 yards. The week before that had 29 fantasy points. And Ladd and this passing attack, the Justin Herbert-led Chargers, are looking really good. And Ladd's continuing to step up as that one. I mean, we're seeing Quentin Johnston start to become kind of like an okay X level wide receiver, putting up some very solid fantasy football points. But Ladd out of the slot has been the one that's super exciting for me. He's only 84% rostered over here on Sleeper. Needs to be 100% rostered on Sleeper and absolutely crushing it. And when we're starting to look at what you could potentially try to go get for a guy like Ladd, I think Ladd has high-end wide receiver 2 potential for him. Now, I'm not trading Jonathan Taylor for Ladd and Khalil Shakir. That's going to be not enough. But if someone's offering Joe Mixon and Khalil Shakir for Ladd, Adam Thielen, and Jahmyr Gibbs, this is a deal on the 11-4 that I might want to do. We look at Ladd McConkey, David Njoku for Courtland Sutton, Chase Brown. Yeah, give me the Ladd McConkey, David Njoku side there. Now, someone tearing off of CMC and Devontae Smith for Ladd, Chuba Hubbard, and Breece. Listen, we just talked about Breece a little bit earlier today. Devontae Smith, Ladd's probably, wide receiver 24, wide receiver 25 for me rest of the season. Devontae Smith somewhere right around wide receiver 14. But then you get Chuba Hubbard with, we don't know what's happening with Jonathan Brooks. That could 100% be a side if you need some extra packaging there. So I love the deal for Ladd. I think it's a great opportunity if you're trying to buy into a high-end wide receiver too. Like we said, we understand that making trades this late into the season for studs is hard. But Ladd McConkey is a guy that I want to be taking full advantage of going forward. Definitely need to be targeting some Ladd McConkey. And in the same breath of a guy like a Ladd McConkey, I want to talk about his teammate J.K. Dobbins as a buy. And J.K. Dobbins, 24 fantasy points in week 9 versus Cleveland, 16 fantasy points in week 8 versus New Orleans. And this Chargers team, like we said, it's always going to be relying on the run. He did have 2 scores versus Cleveland. As this passing attack really starts to get humming with the amazing offensive line and of course with Justin Herbert, that's only going to benefit a guy like J.K. Dobbins, who right now is sliding in as the RB13 in fantasy football. 14 attempts, 85 yards, 6.7 yards per carry, 2 total touchdowns, and caught 2 of his targets for 20 yards. With J.K. Dobbins at the value that you might have drafted him or he got drafted at, is definitely a league winner. But going forward, I think there are some trades that we need to be exploring and we need to potentially be trying to make for J.K. Dobbins, because I don't necessarily think his value is 100% reflecting that. So Breece Hall for Cooper Kupp, J.K. Dobbins, we just kind of talked about that. I think you could lean the Breece Hall side there for the ultimate level upside. But after what we just saw Cooper Kupp do and how I project J.K. Dobbins to do, I think if you need the depth there, that's 100% a piece that I would love to do for that. Jaden Reed and David Njoku for J.K. Dobbins. Give me the J.K. Dobbins side after the Jaden Reed struggles there. Bucky Irving and Deontay Johnson for J.K. Dobbins. Give me the J.K. Dobbins side. There we can scroll down to see if there's any more like oneers, like a Jaden Reed for J.K. Dobbins. Yeah, give me the J.K. Dobbins side. J.K. Dobbins and Darnell Mooney for Josh Downs. Give me the J.K. Dobbins and Darnell Mooney side there for sure. So there's some really great deals going down for J.K. Dobbins. Definitely think you need to explore J.K. Dobbins, Ladd McConkey, Breece Hall, DeAndre Swift, and Brian Thomas trades, because I like these guys, the rest of season schedules. I also like the current value that they're at, and I think they're going to be able to go up higher. So you're actually going to be quote unquote getting a little bit of a buy low opportunity, because I think their value is going to continue to ascend and has kind of dropped here over the recent weeks. So definitely go target these guys. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We are answering every start sit question this season on the way to 4,000 subscribers. So I appreciate all the love and support. We will be streaming on Wednesday night and Friday night this week. So once you're here to ask all your questions, I will answer all your questions. Here are 2 videos if you haven't checked these out already, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.